One of the most difficult decisions you make in your life is whether to buy a house or keep renting. And you will hear over and over and over again, when you rent, you're throwing money away. And when you buy a house, that means you've hit the American dream, you are on your way to success, and wow, you own your first home. When I bought my first home, it was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,000 square foot house on a quarter of an acre of land, and it cost $45,000. That is the price of a car I've looked at recently to replace my 10-year-old vehicle. So if you can imagine, back when I was 23 years old, I was able to buy a house for $45,000 with a down payment of $4,500. You're saying to yourself, well, if houses were that reasonable now, I could buy a house, everybody would own a house. And that's true. And there are probably some places in this country where you can still buy a house for under $100,000 and it's a pretty cool house. But I want to say this about renting. Renting is not throwing your money away. You need a place to live, and there is someone out there that has taken a risk to buy a building and let you live in it, and it's a difficult decision for them to say, who am I going to trust to rent my house or apartment to? Where do I draw the line? People need to live in a house. People need to live in an apartment, but who do I pick? So while you're saying, oh, renting is throwing money down the drain, the person who spent their life savings on an investment of an apartment building or a rental house is actually trusting you to walk into a house that they own, but they don't really own. Let's say it out loud. If you didn't buy your house for cash, you don't own your home. The bank owns your home. The lender owns your home. You have all the responsibilities of the property tax, insurance, repairs and maintenance, hot water heaters, garages flooding, sewer system problems, electrical problems. But the bank actually owns your home. And don't for a minute think they wouldn't take it back if you screw up. They will. So renting is a smart thing to do until you are perfectly capable of handling all the extra responsibility of owning your own home. Think about it. We rent our house, we go in, the plumbing's backed up. We call our landlord. Now, I know some of you probably have some really awful landlord stories, but you call your landlord and you say, my sinks are backed up. And the landlord says, I will get someone out there. And you wait maybe at home, or they let themselves in and you come home and your sink is not stopped up anymore, or your toilet is flushing, or your light bulbs are all replaced. When you own a home, you have to be prepared to do all of those repairs and all of that all by yourself. Now, sometimes families help you buy a house. And you know what? When families help you buy a house, that's a little bit different than you doing it on your own. When you do it on your own, you come up with a down payment. You have, let's say, the average person comes up with 20% down. So if you can buy a house for $500,000, that means you need $100,000 down. Most people aren't able to save $100,000. So then what do? They go into a second mortgage. They say, okay, I can put $50,000 down. I can't put $100,000. Can I please have a second mortgage? And the stories behind what I'm about to tell you are kind of crazy. So what I want to do is do kind of maybe a two-parter on this, and I'm going to say, no, it is not throwing money away to rent. I am blessed to be a renter right now. I've owned 2 homes in my lifetime. I loved them both, but I've been in the rental market since 1999. I have rented since 1999. It's given me a lot of freedom to move from place to place, and the reasons behind my not wanting to own a home right now are very private. But let me tell you, I don't feel I'm throwing my money away by renting. I feel a freedom. And perhaps when you have young children and you don't have a yard, you might not feel that this is very accomplished. But you are really really a hardworking person, I'm sure, and renting is not throwing your money away. Renting does not mean you're not successful. Renting does not mean any of those things. You are just renting for now, and then you can make decisions as you go along. And so if we bust the rent myth, we might be a lot happier in our life and not be envious of those who own a home. And then what I'd like to talk to you about is what a mortgage means. And we know what rent is, what the landlord does. Let's talk about rent, what it means. A landlord owns a place. Let's say he owns a 4-unit apartment building and he bought it for $1 million. When he goes to rent it, he wants to get back his taxes, his insurance, his cost of maintenance, and he wants your rent and the other 3 people in the building to help pay that mortgage. Yes, what you're doing when you rent is you're paying someone else's mortgage, but you're also having the privilege of living in a space that does not belong to you and is not your responsibility. I think you have a responsibility to keep it up, but it's not your responsibility to take care of it like the owner has to. But the more complicated issue is if you have the ability to buy a house, what does that mean? And I want to talk about that in the next part of this video.